I'm going to show you how I edit my videos to make them more interesting, to hide mistakes. I'm going to show you how to keep the momentum going, as well as some other tricks that you can use to make your videos look fantastic. And we're starting right now. I'm Nick. This is video 6 in the series on how to make videos for YouTube. If you have not watched the other videos yet, there will be a playlist link down in the description below that will start you at the beginning. Okay, for this one, we are going to need to be in front of the computer. Just so you know in advance, I'm going to show you the process that I use to edit the videos for my other channel, All Our Questions. I go over the basics of color correction. I show you how to use stock assets, as well as some other tips to help speed up your editing process. So this video is definitely gonna be longer than what you're used to on this channel, but if you're interested in learning how to edit videos for YouTube, you're definitely going to want to watch the whole thing. Also, let me know any questions or suggestions that you have about editing videos down in the comments below. Now, let's head over to the computer. Before we get started, I want to say that if the software you use does not support some of the things I go over in this video, like color correction, for example, I'll put links to software that does down in the description below. For this tutorial, I'm using Sony Vegas 12, and the first thing I want to go over that's pretty important to making your videos look good is color. This video here is from my All Our Questions channel, and I get all kinds of compliments about how professional these videos look. And the reason for that is I use a lot of stock footage in them. I pump the colors up to make everything look great. For example, this light, as I mentioned in a previous video, I have a blue light projecting into the curtain that is behind me. The reason for it being blue is because it's contrasting to my skin tone and kind of helps me pop out a little bit as well. And the setup that I have, the attention's still on me. I'm still in the forefront. I'm the most focused object in the camera. And I have my screen over here on the left that is basically branding my channel in addition to the watermark. So in the event that this video ends up anywhere, people can always know that they can find my stuff at allourquestions.com. Okay, this is what a finished All Our Questions video looks like as far as the tracks are concerned. There's a lot of tracks on here. Some of them I could delete. Looks like I can delete this one. Maybe a couple more here. So I have a few bloated tracks, maybe some ideas that I was working on that I deleted, but you can see the basics of what goes in to putting one of those videos together. As you can see, I have my video track down here, my original audio, my processed audio, my music track. This is where I put my stock footage. There's multiple tracks here for the graphics for my intro. Here I do my branding intro. Then of course I have my end card over here, and I have my watermark and lower third, which I turned off for that particular video. But just so you can see that, I wanted to show you all the different tracks involved, which really you could probably compress this if I didn't have the animated intro or I made that in another file. Technically I could compress this whole thing down to probably 8, maybe 10 different tracks if I wanted to. Okay, let's go over color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my track effects here in Sony Vegas. That's what I'm using. And I'm going to turn off all of my effects so you can see what my video looks like straight out of the camera. This is it. Huge difference, right? In comparison to what you see on the channel, right? I mean, that's a pretty dull image, right? I mean, it works. You know, worst case scenario, I could use that, but that's what it looks like. Now, the first thing I do is I color correct the footage. And if you look here, you will see that I use a gray card, which this is actually a little bit blurry. But for that particular thing, it doesn't matter because I'm just sampling the colors off of that. I do this inside of the color corrector plugin in Vegas. This is a stock plugin it comes with. And I basically just use this and this to sample the colors right off of this card, and it kind of helps balance my colors out in the event that my camera isn't set how it should be. And you can see by the adjustments here that it did require just a small little tweak to balance my blacks and my whites out. Next thing I do is I add, go to a screen here so you can see, is I add contrast. It's not a huge difference, right? But it is a difference indeed. Of course, I sharpen the footage, and here, this is my secret weapon, Magic Bullet Looks. Wham! Now, what I did here is I set up a within the plugin for Magic Bullet looks, I set up some different looks that are my preference. So by doing this, you know, I have my different options that I can choose from. Like this right here, I usually use this when I'm recording the videos in the living room with the living room backdrop. This one is a good setting for the Did You Know series, which is now the color correction that I use for pretty much most of the videos that I make. This is a setting point. It's kind of a greenish, kind of that Hollywood-ish look. Most of my earlier videos for that channel had this setting. But basically in this particular plugin, again, I can go more in depth in this in another video, but not this video at this time. But basically you can go in and you can add all of these different options to your video to give it different looks and different effects. I mean, this is a pro plugin, it's expensive, but it definitely is worth it if you want to give it that extra pop. Okay, the next thing I want to go over is the actual editing process itself. Now, what I do, and this is really going to speed you up, and I mentioned this in the video about scripting, but if I turn off the stock image here, then you'll see that I'm not even looking at the camera. And this really speeds things up, watch. 385 AD. St. Patrick is also a patron saint of Ireland, also known as the Apostle. Okay, so what I did there is I basically, for this particular part, in my script, I knew that I wasn't going to be looking at the screen. I knew that I was going to use stock footage to express that idea. So for that block of information, it sped up my recording process because I didn't even have to look at the screen for it. I didn't even have to look at the lens. I just had to look at my laptop and read what was on my notepad. Okay, another trick I want to show you, and this is with jump cutting. Here, I'm going to turn that audio off right there, and I'm going to go back to the original. Now, if you listen, the Catholics, which basically got rid of all of the pagans, who apparently all had tattoos of snakes at the time. The celebration of St. Patrick's. Okay, if you notice at the end of each clip, I basically, with the tone of my voice, I basically set up the next clip. Listen again. The Catholics, which basically got rid of all of the pagans, who apparently all had tattoos of snakes at the time. So what I did when I was writing my script is I ended my sentences with words or with tones that would help me move on to the next script for the sake or to the next line for the sake of momentum. And what I do also when I'm jump cutting, and this is really what jump cutting is as you can see right here in the waveform of my audio, you can see this right here is when I start saying, is where I start saying which. Basically, this is the very beginning of the W for which. When you're making jump cuts, you want to get that next clip as close to the word as you possibly can, because that helps keep your momentum going and helps keep any dead space from happening that kind of makes the video uncomfortable. And a lot of people do this. If you don't zoom in on the track, you might not even know that you can get it that close, or if you just eyeball it for the sake of speed or something, but you can really keep the momentum of a track going or of a video going by getting that cut as close as possible. Another thing that I want to show you, which I think is very important when you are making your videos, is the use of, and I can't stress this enough, I'm always talking about it, the use of stock graphics and footage and all of that in your videos. The reason for this is it kind of breaks things up. It helps illustrate your ideas and it helps break up the scene, but motion of these things is, to me, what is the most important part of it. Of course, you want to use the right clip or the right image or the right graphic for, for your idea, but instead of just leaving things stagnant and leaving things with no motion whatsoever, it's a personal preference of mine, and I personally think that it helps, it helps hold interest and helps keep the video moving along to add just a little bit of motion even to those graphics, as you can see right here. Now, that graphic, all it is a picture. That's it. It's a picture. This is how I add motion to it. And it looks like it's a video track because it's just floating. It's floating around, so it looks like it's a video track. But in reality, this right here is the actual graphic that I used. It's a stock graphic. I got it off of Dollar Photo Club, which is now Adobe stock. And here, I just started it up here, twisted it, and it ended down here to give it motion, which kind of brings the whole thing to life. And you can also see I added a slight vignette around this, and the reason for that is, you know, there's other people that are using this particular graphic, so I just wanted to do something to make it stand out, you know, make it look just a little bit different. Everything that I use, I'll add some type of effect. Even if it's just a boost in color, I'll add something to it to separate it from what other people are using it for. You can see here, I do the same exact thing with the motion here. This, again, this is just an image, right? And you can see that here, it starts in the middle, and then it just zooms in, right? So the effect that that has is it kind of gives it the feel of a video. This is actually called the Ken Burns effect, where you take a photo and you add motion to it like this. So if you want to know more about the Ken Burns effect, you can, of course, Google for that, and you'll run across all types of cool information that is related to the Ken Burns effect. Another thing that I want to show you here is, I mentioned in a previous video about the importance of speeding things up by recording shorter clips, and when you make a mistake, basically stopping your clip, or, you know, within a small series of mistakes. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that and how it speeds things up. So here I'm getting ready to talk about St. Patrick, and here's how that comes together in practice. Patrick was eventually appointed the first bishop of Ireland and is thought to have died on March 17th, 491. Okay, 461. So there, that was a mistake. I got the information wrong. So a few different ways I can approach this. One, if I was actually in the editing process, I would watch this, and I'd say, okay, Patrick. I'd watch this and say, St. Patrick was eventually appointed the first. St. Patrick was eventually. Okay, let's see if we can get through this time. St. Patrick was eventually appointed. Okay. Within a few years of his death, I know that because I went through all of these tracks right here, there's a couple things that I know. One, that this right here is the track that I want to use. Second, for the sake of hard drive space, I know that if I don't want to keep those other edits, or if I don't want to keep those other recordings, I can delete all of these if I want to. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to pull this in, I'm going to pull this in, and I'm going to show you the cut that I do for the actual jump cut. All I do is I bring it back. Not even sure if this is the right clip, but I'm going to use it anyway just to show you for the sake of bringing these together. You know what? Let's use the right one. Okay, last one worked, but this one. Okay, since I ran across that, I want to mention that as well. Doing it this way, it's really helpful and speeds up your process as well if you leave yourself video notes. So let's say, for the sake of this, let's say you record a video a month in advance. Well, when it comes time to edit the video, you might have forgotten the details of your script. You might have forgotten, you know, where it is that you needed to do something in the editing process. So if you leave yourself video and audio notes, it kind of helps you pull the thing together faster when it comes time to edit your video. Now, one thing personally for me, you know what? I'm actually going to find this part in the video because I'm not sure how I cut this. Because of how this cut happens, doing it now, I would actually want to put a stock graphic or image or something there, because I'm not comfortable with how that transition takes place, because I'm in a totally different spot. So let's go to the stock folder on that, and I'm going to show you the difference that adding something can make. So we will just add the image here. And what this is going to do is this is going to actually hide the mistake, or not the mistake, but just the little part that I'm happy with or not happy with in that transition. Watch. 17th, 461. Within just a few years of St. Patrick's death, he began to be celebrated as a holy saint. Okay, now I would cut this there before the next one starts, before the next line starts. Within just a few years of St. Patrick's death, he began to be celebrated as a. So when I'm doing my cuts, right, or when I'm doing my stock and my graphic and everything, another thing that I want to note here is I will stop the footage pretty close to where I stop saying one thing and I go into the next, or in between words or something like that. It kind of gives it more of a natural feel. And I had a friend of mine tell me this one time. He was editing videos, this is several years back, and he said the same thing. I said, wow, how do you know, the right places to cut things? And he said, well, I just feel it. I just watch the video and I go with what feels right. And I suggest you do the same. If you take the time to just sit back and watch your video and try to get into the different aspects of the motion of the video, the feel of the video, the momentum of the video, then you can start to see where you should add things and cut things and stop things and so on. So that's basically how you would hide something that you are not comfortable with, or a mistake, or say you make a stupid face and you want to cover it up. Using stock footage and graphics and all of that is a fantastic way to do that, and it makes everything seamless, so the person that's watching your video, they don't really know what's going on behind the scenes as far as the mistakes that you've made and the things that you're doing to cover up the mistakes that you've made, or to make everything flow together as smooth as possible. Another thing I want to show you here is there are different ways that you can transition without using stock footage or any stock at all if you need to. One, of course, is you can just let the jump cut happen. It's what a lot of people do, and it works fine. I mean, it's not, there's not a wrong way to do it as long as your cut is tight. But one thing that you can do, let's say for this segment here, 61. Within just a few years of St. Patrick's death, he began to be celebrated as a holy saint. Because I go into something else there. So here, I could also go into my crop tool. And again, if you do not have software that supports doing these kind of things, I'm putting links in the description to download free software that you can install that does. But basically what I would do here, or another option that you can do here, is you can do a zoom cut. And what a zoom cut does is it changes the zoom. Makes sense, right? A zoom cut. It changes the zoom of your image. And you'll see a lot of people use this as well, but it makes a big difference. Watch. 17th, 461. Within just a few years of St. Patrick's death, he began to be celebrated as a holy saint. You know what? I would actually, personally, stretch that out. There we go. 461. Within just a few years of St. Patrick's death, he began to be celebrated as a holy saint, and even though he's never been canonized by the Pope, he's still looked at as an official saint. Now, here's another thing that I want to point out to you. There's a breath that I took right here, right? I can take that out and tighten everything up just a tad more, and that zoom cut allows me to do that. Been canonized by the Pope, he's still looked at as an official saint in the eyes of the church. Now we're going to play that for a minute. Okay, I would give that just a little bit of breathing room so that it feels right. Right there. By the Pope, he's still looked at as an canonized by the Pope. He's still looked at as an. Okay. Now, another place that this comes in handy is, let's say you made a mistake right? Let's say you want to take out a breath, you know, like a long breath, or say you burped, or let's say you made an actual mistake of some kind. Well, all you have to do is, if you went by the rule that I mentioned in the video about recording your video, you can go back to your clips, right? And you can say, okay, well, I'm going to start this where my mistake left off, or I'm going to start the video after I made my mistake, and I'm just going to use a zoom cut to bring it in, and then nobody's going to know that I made the mistake in the first place. That's an excellent way to hide mistakes so that you can keep your video running smooth and you don't have to remember every single thing that you say. And lastly, another tool that you can use for situations like this, like let's say that the zoom cut is not something that you want to use because it's just not the look that you are going for, or you just don't want it to be a hard cut. Another thing that you can do is you can actually use transitions. So in this example, I'm using a transition from Tuber Tools, and I'm going to put this here, and I know where to position it. And it'll just do a flash in between the two different parts. And you can see there the difference that even that makes. Now, for the sake of this, if I was using this in my video, I would personally speed it up a tad. Put this back here, drag this so that it fills the screen, and then there we go. So the scene changes just a little bit. It's still zoomed in just a tad, but when the scene changes, this transition makes it to where you don't really see it. Now, one thing I want to mention is this is good for breaking up segments, really good for breaking up segments, but I wouldn't recommend adding one of these in between every single cut that you make because it's kind of overkill and would be kind of annoying to the person watching your video. If you are interested in graphics like this or transitions like this, you can head over to tubertools.com, where you will find all kinds of these and other graphics that you can use for your YouTube videos and your YouTube channel. Hopefully you learned something about the editing process. I know that video was a lot longer than you're used to on this channel, and congratulations for sticking through it, because that shows that you are indeed interested in stepping up your content game. Remember, if you have any questions or suggestions on video editing, just leave them down in the comments below. Remember to check out tubertools.com, where you can find channel headers, end cards, video graphics, and a whole bunch of other stuff to help you out with your YouTube channel. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button somewhere on this page so you can get more videos like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.